Yeah, more fun than pulling a pig's tail. It's the Sixers Talk podcast brought to you by Wilmington University. WilmU Works. Finally, the Noah has returned to Rivers Casino. Welcome back, Noah. We're here at Rivers Casino, live podcast. All of the fun and frivolity of the Sixers season is over. None of our predictions for the team came true as far as where they would finish. But we're here trying to salvage what's left and bring it to the surface so that people can see what we should be looking forward to. We will get into a must watch for any Sixers fan out there. We'll talk about that. We will get into some grades for the team. Hot and heavy coaching search going on, and not just the players that the people that the Sixers are looking at for their job, but Doc Rivers has suddenly floated to the top of one of the finalists for the Phoenix Suns job. I did not expect that, Noah.
Yeah, I think we did predict that he would not be back coaching, which is still a possibility. But hey, he has a lot of credentials on the resume. Some
Jeez
positive,
Louise.
some negative. Would definitely be a fascinating call if he was the choice to replace Monty Williams. Two close friends. Doc Rivers coached him back in the day, his very first year as a head coach. So I think that would be a surprising choice, and it would involve an odd reunion as well with Chris Paul. But it is interesting to keep tabs on those other searches, which are obviously relevant for the Sixers, with Phoenix, Milwaukee having some overlapping candidates there, and Doc Rivers is not one of them. But yeah, I will be very intrigued if he does end up getting that job. And we will wait and see how that process develops.
Yeah, Nick Nurse and Frank Vogel, reportedly the candidates the Sixers have spoken with. Frank Vogel, of course, Wildwood, New Jersey native, and formerly of the Los Angeles Lakers, Indiana Pacers. And, of course, he spent 3 seasons in Los Angeles. Doc Rivers spent 3 seasons in Philadelphia. Vogel with a championship to his name from the bubble. And it's funny, Doc Rivers leads the Sixers to 54 wins, their most since that 01 Sixers team that went to the finals. Do you feel like with these upper echelon NBA jobs, suddenly Phoenix has become one of those marquee jobs because Monty Williams did this incredible job leading them to the conference finals, and they trade for Kevin Durant, new ownership, all the influx of new blood and energy there. Do you feel like these top-notch jobs, they feel like there's only like they have to bring in these high caliber coaches like Doc Rivers or people who have been to the mountaintop? Are they less likely, like Monty Williams turned the Phoenix situation into like a marquee job or helped turn it into that? Do you feel like, oh, we can't reach back down to bring up someone who hasn't had a chance to bring a team to that level because this is such a marquee position?
Yeah, I think that's probably broadly true. A lot of it just depends on the individual decision makers in those spots. And as you said, Phoenix has
case by case basis.
Yeah, Phoenix has a new owner who it sounds like has a lot of power, Matt Ishbia. So we're still trying to gauge exactly how he makes these sort of decisions. But we did hear Daryl Morey acknowledge at his press conference after Rivers' firing that, yeah, there is some value in a coach who has been there before, had high level experience, and there's just greater uncertainty with someone who's never had a head coaching job before or doesn't have that depth of a track record or credentials on their resume. I think, yeah, there are tons of valid ways to approach a coaching search. And if you are a team trying to get over the hump, I think some risk aversion just inherently tends to go along with that. You don't want to screw it up. You don't want to lose the foundation you've already built. But that said, I think there's also a lot in the camp of let's be creative, let's be innovative, let's search for new solutions, let's try to be ahead of the curve. And yeah, you try to find what approach is best for you. And I think just assess the candidates on their own merits as well. I think with all these searches, you do tend to hear very early, like this guy is a strong favorite. And from where I'm sitting, like you want to actually ask them legit questions. You want to listen to what they have to say, and you want to have these interviews matter. All the years of experience and what you can evaluate from that are important, but you want to ask your own questions and actually have those be impactful, I think, in the process, in my opinion.
You sound like Jeffrey Lurie using risk averse, just throwing that in there. Jeffrey Lurie telling the coaching staff not to be risk averse when it comes to taking chances in the draft and free agency and things like that. Some weird baseball Philadelphia synergy going on here as we're staring out at the sports book, because you're talking, I peek to my right and I see Zach Eflin toeing the slab, getting ready to play the Blue Jays as the starter for the Tampa Bay Rays. And some guy was just walking right underneath the TV in this sweet John Kruk maroon jersey. So I'm like, man, that's just Philadelphia all over the place. And here you go throwing risk averse out there. But so with that said, though, Noah, as we reflect back on the Sixers situation, okay, yeah, these high marquee top level jobs do attract a certain type of clientele. So would that make you less likely to give the job to a guy like Sam Cassell, who, although he has been in the fray and battled as a player and as a right-hand man to many deep playoff runs with Doc Rivers and other coaching staffs, would you feel like he would be less likely a candidate as a first-time head coach for a job like the 76ers, even though he does have a close relationship with the players and such?
Yeah, I think just trying to assess what is most likely to happen, I agree with that broad sentiment. If you're asking my personal opinion, no, it shouldn't be a huge knock against him that he's never gotten that opportunity before. I think
he's probably like one of the guys I really would want to have the job personally. But
yeah, there's a lot of impressive work that he's done from a player development standpoint. And, in one of Doc Rivers' final days, he was pretty passionate about saying, I think his basketball mind is underrated, and he's the one assistant coach who is heavily involved in both of our offensive and defensive meetings. And it is a little surprising, certainly to Rivers, who's worked closely with Cassell, that that opportunity hasn't been there thus far. So, yeah, I think just taking a step back and listening to what Daryl Morey had to say, the Sixers will respect the candidates who have been to the mountaintop before, and Sam Cassell just isn't one of them in terms of head coaching. But, in my personal opinion, shouldn't weigh that too strongly against him. But on the other hand, you also don't want to neglect, like, Nick Nurse, very first year as a head coach, did an incredibly impressive job. Won a title the very next year. He's coach of the year. Like, the fact that his head coaching track record does include a bunch of impressive stuff, I think has some value. And the reality is just Sam Cassell has not yet been granted that opportunity thus far, and therefore, at least just on that surface level, has less in his, working in his favor. But it is true, has those really good relationships with James Harden, Tyrese Maxey, even Joel Embiid. Has drilled with him a bunch on the mid-range game and some of the nuances of that.
Right.
So I think that all means something. But there are a lot of really well-qualified free agent coaches out there. The Sixers are interviewing many of those guys, and just on that initial level of what have you done as a head coach, Sam Cassell starts out below all of those guys.
Right. Yeah, it's just like pieces to the puzzle, I guess, of each of these candidates. And, I think I'm just personally, I just have an aversion to retreads because a coach coached another team and they had success and then he gets fired. It doesn't necessarily mean like, oh, let's, pick him up and may turn him into the coach for our team and things will turn out differently. They tried that with Doc Rivers to some success. I mean, you got to give him some credit because there's a lot of wins racked up over these 3 regular seasons for the 76ers, but in the end, still waiting to get past the second round here. And so if Sam Cassell has some knocks against him, we talked a little bit about Nick Nurse, Frank Vogel, like I said, NBA champion with the Los Angeles Lakers. Kind of a surprising hire when the Lakers chose him as their head coach. But where does Sam Cassell rank in your list? Is he in your short list, top 5 maybe? Or is there a coach that you think is the ideal candidate for this job?
Yeah, like I said, honestly, if I was a key decision maker in this process, I would genuinely value what I hear in the interviews, and I would have a lot of questions.
Oh,
that
whoa! You're saying you be taking them to the task and
I'd be
reviewing some film in those interviews,
I'd be
and
taking close notes. I'd be asking.
So this isn't going to be an easy answer. It sounds
I'd
like.
be asking, what did you learn? But no, just to the basic question. From what I know, which again is not nearly as much as someone who, for instance, has coached right next to him or something along those lines, Sam Cassell would not. I don't think he'd be my number one candidate. I think Nick Nurse does stand out to me as a really strong candidate for this job.
Even with all the stuff with Joel and the complaining, and
I think there's mutual respect there still.
Okay.
I think yes, things get heated during playoff series, and I think on both sides of that, there's a tendency to pinpoint officiating and perhaps be a little dramatic. But no, I don't think that to me
would stop them from working together.
Disqualifies him in any way. And I think, honestly, if anything, you heard Daryl Morey say we need to be more cognizant in the regular season of preparing Joel to face aggressive playoff defenses. Nick Nurse has been extraordinarily aggressive and creative in the schemes against Embiid, and just in general has done outstanding work as a defensive coach. His teams consistently have forced a bunch of turnovers and won the possession game. And I think if you look at a roster with higher top-end talent, better top-end talent, those little marginal wins where you're gaining a few extra possessions per game actually could mean a lot in the playoffs. And I think just looking at what Nick Nurse did before he ascended to the NBA, he had to be really creative and figure things out on the fly. Started as a player coach in Great Britain, and has the history with Daryl Morey as well. Won a D-League championship with the Houston organization. So certainly none of these guys are flawless. There's been reports out there that Nick Nurse can be a little bit abrasive with his personality, and I think brutal honesty can be effective at times, but maybe that wears a little thin, especially when your team is disappointing or not achieving to expectations. But man, I think it just feels pretty obvious that this guy is a very high-level coach, and I do think it's telling that he is a top candidate for these other prestigious jobs that are out there in Phoenix and Milwaukee. I don't think that's fluky. I don't think that's all of these organizations copying each other. I think that's them all hearing what Nick Nurse has to say and recognizing he is an aggressive, creative personality, and that blueprint in a head coach is just really nice to have in a playoff team that is trying to get to that next level. So we could say a bunch of positive things about all of these guys. But yeah, my personal opinion is like, it seems pretty clear Nick Nurse has to be one of your top candidates. And again, I would be really curious what he has to say in the interview about, hey, where did things go wrong in Toronto? Would you reconsider playing your stars, 40, 41 minutes a game in the regular season, like he often did with Van Vliet and Siakam? What would you change about your half court offense? Would you, deviate at all stylistically in terms of your defensive scheme with this personnel? And there are a million questions, and I think it's right for all these guys to get some hard questions. But personal opinion, like Nick Nurse has to be at or near the top of the candidates out there.
If I couldn't get Sam Cassell, I think Monty Williams, I really take a shining to him and what he's done. And I feel like a bit of familiarity here with the team for that one season with Brett Brown. And he's got an incredible story himself of coming over adversity and overcoming adversity in life, let alone the basketball court. So having that type of life experience, I think also can lend itself to working with some of these superstars and things like that. I don't know what the heck happened in Phoenix. You would think he should get a year to work with Kevin Durant if that's going to be the situation. So I consider that more of an outlier. Like you said, Ishbia coming in probably wants to hire his own head coach. So Monty Williams, I think, would be up there for me if we're talking about one of these retreads. But Dave Yeager, do they interview him? Do they give him a look? Is he interested in becoming a head coach? There's also a possibility of that. But that's all I have to say on the head coaching search. It'll play itself out. I don't really think that it mattered who their coach was in the series against the Celtics, because I feel like the players were the ones that helped decide down the stretch and when it mattered what happened in that series. But I'll give you the final word on the coaching search.
No, I think that's all good stuff. Yeah, definitely with Monty Williams, it's extraordinary how respected he is just from a character standpoint, and everyone raves about him and how they want to play for him. And I think that gives him the ability that some other coaches don't have to be harsh at times and to give unpleasant criticism. But man, yeah, those last 2 years in Phoenix and the way those seasons ended would give me real pause, and I'd want to hear what he learned from those experiences and how they would not happen yet again in Philadelphia. But I think just like being honest with ourselves, being humble, there's like a billion things that go into deciding who's the best head coach, and many of them are mysterious and hard to figure out. There's no great formula for this that everyone should follow. I think no one could have anticipated that Nick Nurse would have had such a brilliant first year with the Raptors, for instance. So,
I think Budenholzer coming off of the Spurs coaching staff to leading the Hawks to the best top number one seed.
Wins,
and the same leading to Milwaukee Bucks to a championship. You wouldn't have thought that either.
Yeah, so it definitely seems like the Sixers, as you noted, are prioritizing guys with extensive experience. And I think among that group, there are really strong candidates. All you can ask is that it's a real, thorough process with no predetermined outcome. And if that's the case, the Sixers will hope that, that next guy can finally get them over the second round hurdle. But yet a lot of it just depends on the star talent and whether those guys show up in the big games yet again.
We're going to give out some player grades after we take a quick time out here. Of course, we are brought to you by Wilmington University on the Sixers Talk podcast. And Wilmington University and students are in the game, upskill in fields like cybersecurity, fintech, healthcare, and education, in person or online. Get in the game at Wilmington University. Find us at wilmu.edu. We are, of course, coming to you live today from Rivers Casino. And always a pleasure to be here. It's time to rush to new rewards at Rivers Casino. Now there's a whole new way for you to earn, redeem, and level up your rewards. Get your new Rush Rewards card and get more out of your game at Rivers Casino, Philadelphia. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Back here live on the Sixers Talk podcast. And let's just start at the mountaintop, shall we? I'm going to throw out some numbers, Noah, that are disappointing to say the least, as we give out some grades for these Sixers players. A historic season for Joel Embiid, one for the record books, particularly in Sixers lore. 33.1 regular season average, 23.7 postseason average, 54.8 field goal percentage, 43.1 playoff percentage, 22.9 regular season assist percentage, 12.7 playoff assist percentage, regular season turnover percentage, 11.9. Playoff turnover percentage, 15.6 for Joel Embiid. So with those numbers, Mr. Levick, the season as a whole, regular and post, what kind of grade would you give the reigning NBA MVP?
Yeah, I think it's so hard because you're trying to find the right balance between how much you should weigh regular season versus playoffs.
It is. It's tough, but it all matters, right?
It all matters. So I don't want to neglect that he was literally the MVP and had a very, very strong case to deserve that award.
So much fun to watch.
Yeah, and just continues to expand his offensive game, and had nights where he put up 59 and was borderline unstoppable, I think. So the playoffs were really, really disappointing, though. So I think trying to.
I didn't expect you to say that, but
no, I mean,
it's true. No, it's true. It's just that the way your inflection just caught me off guard. But 200%.
So I want to try my best to balance both those things, and I guess I would land at like somewhere between a B plus and a B. And to me, that feels a little bit harsh because he was the MVP. I think he earned that award. But the playoffs matter so much, and he wasn't good enough, even with the caveat that he suffered that, significant knee injury in Game 4 against Brooklyn. I think still accounting for the factors within his control, their performance was subpar, and he's so important for this team that's unacceptable. He just needs to be better in the playoffs. So I think, somewhere between a B plus and a B, and maybe I'd lean toward a B plus because that feels absurd to give the MVP a B, but I'll say a B plus, and obviously the regular season itself, I think there's a case it could be an A plus,
Right.
but the playoffs were definitely quite below that.
Yeah. You said between a B plus and a B. I have here my notes B plus because, like you said, it's hard to give him anything below a B plus because then if you give a B to someone else on the team, it's like, oh, they're the same as immeasurably as Joel Embiid's impact on the team. So it's like you have to like kind of use him to set the standards. So I feel like that's a great place to start. But yeah, I have him down for a B plus. I mean, as transcendent and fun and just unstoppable so many times during the playoffs. We just didn't see that as much in the postseason when it mattered. And it's something he'll have to figure out. I mean, it's not going to be handed to you, and it has been difficult for every Sixers player in the last 20 plus years since Allen Iverson to try to get over the mountaintop and to reach the NBA Finals. So it's not going to be easy for him either, and he has to put the work in to be better and to just figure out whatever it is. And whether it's, I'm just saying, just random thing, but losing weight or playing closer to the basket or being a 90% free throw shooter or whatever it is, what I'm saying? He just there has to be another level, just has to be another level to his game, and passing out of double teams and figuring out how to make his teammates better, et cetera, et cetera. So from Embiid, we go to Harden. Harden led the league in assists. Again, difficult to give him a grade anything below a certain amount because then that would really reflect how you feel about the rest of the 76ers. I gave him a B. I felt like he helped the Sixers win the Joel Embiid trade. I mean, excuse me. Wow. Ben Simmons trade. I felt like the way he came back from the injury really told me a lot about his desire to win and what that meant to him. And I felt like at times I thought I was watching Houston Rockets James Harden, and there were times where I saw the very bad of James Harden. But all in all, I give him a B for the season.
I'd agree with that. Yeah, I think. I mean, to be clear,
and we don't have to belabor these too long because we have a few guys to get to. So
yeah. Obviously, these are important ones. Yeah, to me, like with James Harden, the regular season definitely was A minus A territory, and I think just in these grades, obviously, for me, I'm looking at what are you capable of and what does the team need from you. So, of course, when we say Joel Embiid is a B plus, that doesn't mean he's a B plus player, right? If we're rating the best players in the NBA,
right,
he's one of the top few. But that said, James Harden, again, game 6 and 7 weren't good enough. Game 1 and 4 were special, really, really special. Single-handedly won them that game in Boston. And that was at least an improvement over last postseason. There were more of those performances and more signs that he could amp up the aggression when appropriate and still be sensational in those moments. But I think taking it all into account, I agree with the B.
I thought there was another Sixer that might have had one of those transcendent virtuoso performances, like 40 plus type against Boston to try to push them over the top. That didn't happen. But
Maxey, yeah, I think had the one game with 30, which was important in game 5 where pretty much everyone played well. And he at least was better than the regular season against Boston, but the Sixers, did not get any of those outstanding performances from a player outside of their top 2.
Also in the B category for the 76ers team, and just so you know, I'm not giving any grades to the players near the back end of the roster, like Montrezl Harrell or Furkan Korkmaz or Lewis King or Jaden Springer. They just need to get better, period. But in the B category, I also have DeAnthony Melton and Paul Reed. What were your grades on those players?
They'd be between a B and a B plus for me. Honestly, I think.
Right. There you go. Okay. So on the upside, yeah. So you think I might be a little low on them. Yeah.
Yeah. Honestly, I might lean a little more toward B plus for both. Right. I think Melton.
I could definitely be talked into that. I just think Melton, hey, come on, an undersized guard like him coming over from a different team to try to make an impact. And I just thought it was just an A1 trade for the team. And I just love an overachiever. I just feel like he's an overachiever. So
I mean his talents translated fantastically from Memphis. I think the one bitter memory from the playoffs is that game 6 against Boston. They needed someone who Robert Williams was guarding to make an open three, and he failed at that. But he also had some excellent postseason performances, and I think just consistently showcased this ability to thrive in chaos. I think he ended up either number 2 or number 3 in the NBA in total steals. So despite playing through a back issue for most of the year, was both super durable and super productive defensively. I think it was very important for this team to force more turnovers, get more transition opportunities, and he was integral with all of that. So for a sixth man, you do want a little more consistency with make the big shots you need to make in the postseason. And he notably didn't do that in game 6, but none of these guys are perfect. And I think overall, a B plus feels about right for me. I think he had a strong first season in Philly, and Paul Reed, I think, took some nice steps forward this year. I think he earned the number 1 backup center role, and I think he displayed maturity and understanding the balance between predictability and sometimes delightful unpredictability.
Right.
Continued to be just statistically and by your eyes an elite offensive rebounder, point blank. And it'll be really fascinating in free agency to see what happens with him. But for me, a B plus feels about right for both.
Yeah, I can definitely be talked into that. And I think the thing with Reed that makes him one of the most successful Sixers this season is the coachability, man. Just to be able to show the growth and the buy-in, and to, you know, alter your instincts from some of the things that he wanted to do the things that the coaching staff were telling him to do, like instead of going up with shots and kicking them back out to get better opportunities and better looks. And I mean, he started out one way, and his work ethic got him to where he is now, and I just admire that in a lot of different ways. And I kind of glossed over Tyrese Maxey. I should have included him in the B plus category with Embiid. I thought I could be talked to an A for him. I talk about growth with Paul Reed and coachability. No one's been through the ringer like Maxey, and he's shown that there's like nothing that's going to stop him from continuing to grow and be better. And I think all seasons like this past one can only do things to help and develop and mature him in a way that he'll be better and more prepared the next time he gets chances and opportunities to help the team succeed.
Agreed. It's pretty wild that this guy shot under 30% from 3 in the one college season, 30.1 his rookie year, and now he's one of the best shooters in the NBA. And this year even had more diversity in the shot making, hitting those step backs, hitting these super long range threes, even the off ball movement threes, added that to his game at a higher level. So I think you pair that with the amazing speed and driving ability, and the fact that he did improve defensively this year, I think noticeably, especially in the second half of the year. I think it was a really good regular season for him. And like every other Sixer, the Celtics series was a tad disappointing. As we said, had a few bright moments in that matchup, but overall was not quite good enough as a number 3 guy. But yeah, for a 22-year-old, I think there's still a ton of reasons to be encouraged.
Wow.
And yeah, B plus I think is where I would land. And if you tried to argue for higher, I probably wouldn't strongly oppose that at all.
And there was a point there where people were comparing, Maxey with Jordan Poole, and on the same conversation, it's just like those up and coming stars, Austin Reeves, suddenly a guy that's in that conversation. Maxey hasn't taken the step back or as much criticism as Jordan Poole has received, I think, because he's kind of sustained his level of play in a way. It hasn't fallen off as dramatically as Poole did in the postseason. So I give him credit for that as well. I don't have any more B's. I have a couple C's and C pluses.
Okay.
The C pluses are Tobias Harris and PJ Tucker. Tucker, was he Milwaukee PJ Tucker? No. More consistent from the corner threes. They had a deeper playoff run. And was he Miami PJ Tucker and as impactful? Did he have those type of opportunities with the Sixers? I don't feel like there were as many opportunities for him to be as impactful on the game. And yeah, okay, he wasn't prolific from that corner three, but I think the intangibles and those things that you don't quite quantify in the box score are why you brought him here to have that type of impact in the postseason. I mean, toughness was the thing Embiid wanted him for. I think he provided that. Um, but Father Time catches up with everybody. I mean, he's not going to be a 36-year-old, 35-year-old version of himself. But I thought that he provided some of what you expected. I can't get caught up in the money or whatever. I mean, the price is the price. And a lot can be said the same for Tobias Harris. Was he a game changer in a lot of instances? I don't think so. I just feel like he was very versatile and very accepting of the role that they wanted him to have, and definitely had some moments where he shined and helped the team out, but nothing that I feel like made me feel so compelled to give him a higher grade than a C+.
I would definitely be higher on Tucker. I think he had a rough start to the year, and that probably stuck with many people and led them to have negative feelings about the duration and money with the contract. But I thought, for the most part, like second half of the season, he was an actively positive player and helping them win most games. And I don't want to totally neglect the cultural impact and the fact that you heard a bunch of guys saying our defensive communication is so much better and he holds guys accountable and he doesn't let stuff slide.
He said they weren't even talking when he got here, right?
Yeah. And I think it was noticeable that in their biggest wins of the postseason, like that game 5, you saw a pretty cohesive defensive team, and you saw a team that was all aligned and all playing really hard.
You would go as high as a B for him?
Yeah.
Okay.
There weren't glaring rebounding problems. So, and also I think with the corner threes, like everyone, would groan when he would pass one up or when he would miss one. But, statistically, he made 40% of them in the regular season, and he wasn't quite good enough in the playoffs. In that game 6, I believe he was 2 for 7 overall. So he did take them and just didn't make enough. In game 7, he actually started out really well. I think he scored 10 points in that first quarter.
Mm-hmm.
So it was a mixed bag to me with the shooting. But as you said, that is a small amount of his role and what he's asked to do here. So for me, I think I would probably go with B. I think below that personally feels a little bit harsh and like it's putting a little too much scrutiny on the scoring when that's just not his role. I think outside of the first month or two of the season, he was like above average relative to what he was asked to do.
But what about Tobias Harris?
Tobias Harris, you said C+. Mm-hmm. I might even go a little. I might go C.
Okay.
I think, again, you don't want to fixate too much.
Ben Barry's putting up a D.
He's putting up a D
behind you.
I mean, like individually, the game 6 was probably a D. I think he had 2 or 4 points in that game.
Mm-hmm.
It's just such a big game, and you need to be better. And for him, it's always a combination of decision making, both the speed of that and when is aggression appropriate, when should I defer to stars. Those are tough choices night after night. And I think the overarching mindset was great. He knew he needed to put up catch and shoot threes at a high rate, but also recognize that he's not the number 1 or 2 star. But like, the production just needs to be so much better in these really large moments. He did make, again, some strides in those peripheral areas this year. I thought had, again, some impressive defensive performances against 1 and 2 guards. And I believe in that game 5 against Boston, he had like 9 rebounds in the first half, which is not expected from Tobias Harris. But you don't want to fixate too much on the contract, but you understand why there'd be a lot of anger over the Sixers having handed that out 4 years ago. And just the reality is,
well, it's coming to an end, right?
Yeah, 1 more year. And from a production standpoint, not good enough. So for me, it would probably be a C.
Ben Barry yelling out, "Thank God!" I don't know if that you guys picked up on the microphone, but that's pretty funny. Okay, what about Niang, Milton, and McDaniels? C for me. I have all 3 at a C. I think Niang, once again, overachiever, and that endears him to me a bit. I just I hate that he played such a role in the offense that they needed him to come off the bench and make shots, particularly in the postseason. Um, his shooting definitely was a catalyst to things. It helped ignite some flow and spacing and helped the team. Sometimes he was a microwave coming off the bench, but um, I didn't see as much growth. Maybe because it wasn't an opportunity. I'm switching gears to Milton now. It wasn't as much opportunity, and I didn't see as much growth for Shake. Um, it felt like when Harden was out with the injury, he had opportunity to show how he could fit in the rotation, what he could do when he had the ball in his hands, playing off the ball, on the ball. That there was opportunity there for them, and I think he showed some things. It just once Harden came back, that really shrunk, and he was just kind of a casualty of that. But and McDaniels, I had a lot of hope and opportunity that I just didn't feel like he kind of got he didn't quite get his legs under him as much as you would hoped he would. And for the athleticism that he showed and the versatility he showed, it just wasn't something that the team could use at the right times. But I know it's three guys and it's a lot to each person individually, but give your grades and how you felt about each of them.
Yeah, I would be higher on Niang and Milton both. I mean, this was the fifth straight year George Niang shot over 40% from 3, and those were not all wide open looks. I think that is super valuable. And I think it's also a fair point that at times it felt like they relied on that too heavily, and they needed to play Niang often in those Embiid-less lineups with Harden, which wasn't always an ideal look.
Right.
But man, that is pretty special shooting. I think he's one of the best pure shooters in the league at this point. And very weird and yet again disappointing end of the playoffs with him grabbing Jaylen Brown's knee. And
did you feel let down by him at all in the postseason?
I mean, I think in the playoffs his defense was better than last year in large part because he wasn't bothered by this left knee injury, and I think at times that was really important because it enabled you to play him without him being a defensive liability. Did knock down some big shots in that game 6, albeit not in a winning effort. So I thought he was impressive at times in the playoffs, just in terms of the ability to remain playable and hold his own at surprising moments defensively when teams would try to target him. And the 3-point shooting also was, a lot better. I think was around 43, 44% overall in the postseason. So for me, like anything below a B- would feel harsh. I think I might even go with a B for George Niang from the perspective of what's realistic expectations, what did the team need from him. I think for the most part, he checked those boxes quite well, albeit, not at a level that elevated them above the second round. But I think I'd probably land on a B. Shake Milton, I think probably a B-. I think he didn't really get chances in the playoffs. So we can't say it was a situation where he was handed extended opportunities and then failed. It just Doc Rivers made the call to go with other guys. I thought him and DeAnthony Melton as a duo were excellent at times together when the Sixers' top guards were injured. So I didn't think he did much wrong during the regular season in those shorthanded spots. Played a career high 76 games. I thought flashed some improvement as a passer and some willingness to try creative dimes with that left hand and show off that wingspan around the hoop, both with the facilitating and the scoring. So I didn't think it was a bad regular season for him at all. And then the playoffs, it's just he was on the bench, and what are you going to do? And yeah, I think Jalen McDaniels somewhere around a C or a C- would feel appropriate because the Sixers touted him as this is a guy who is going to help us in the playoffs, unlike Matisse Thybulle. That didn't come to fruition. And it was, I think, when they made that trade, pretty clear that considering he hadn't played in the playoffs before, there'd be some growing pains in all likelihood. And ultimately, those were significant enough that Doc Rivers didn't trust him in the most important games of the season. Again, some of that's on what the coach feels is appropriate, but I couldn't go any higher than a C for McDaniels, and I might even go down to a C- just because he literally wasn't deemed playable at all when the team really could have used some two-way wing quality play off its bench.
A season of lowered expectations probably knocked down some of my grades for some of those guys just because the way it turned out. But I definitely think the things you added make a lot of sense and give some clarity to that. I'm going to read something to you, Noah. Through the eyes of the players, front office, media, and fans who witnessed it firsthand, NBA TV's latest basketball stories retrospective takes an in-depth look at one of the most eventful and rewarding seasons in 76ers history. In addition to its collective team success, individual accolades for Philadelphia included Iverson and Brown being named NBA MVP and Coach of the Year, respectively, while Dikembe Mutombo captured 2001 NBA Defensive Player of the Year. Aaron McKee was named NBA Sixth Man of the Year, and Iverson won NBA All-Star MVP. Check it out. The documentary set to run on May 31st at 8 p.m. on NBA TV. The 76ers. Everything but the chip. The 2001 76.
Like the title. Yeah.
Everything but the chip. That's kind of must-see TV for Sixers fans.
That'll be a fun watch. Yeah.
Will it be fun, though? Fun to a certain point. And then it'll be a little bit sad.
Well, you're talking a bunch about like who overachieved, who underachieved. I think that
whole team of overachievers.
Right. Yeah. And I think that Lakers team was such a juggernaut that just winning one game from them in the incredible fashion they did was pretty thrilling. So I think there should be some cool memories to relive there. Yeah.
I think 200%. The memories will be cool. And you have to appreciate the journey before thinking about the destination, which was runner-up. But I think the one thing that when I look at, there's a photo of just Iverson on the bench with Larry Brown trying to coach him up. And it's just a photo. So it's just you're reading body language and eye contact and things like that. But that's the part that I think annoy is the word that's coming to my mind. But like they worked it out in order to make it to the NBA Finals and win a game against the Lakers. But there was a lot of animosity and angst during the season that I feel like if it could have been, less animosity, maybe they don't go to two game sevens and, gets 4-1 gentlemen swept. That's the part that I don't want to relive as much.
They were very, very close to trading Allen Iverson that offseason. And a few years ago, I talked to a couple of guys on that team for a feature story, and they were pretty honest about that. Didn't just suddenly fade away because they were winning games. I think they often butted heads and just fundamentally were not aligned. But I think that postseason run, regardless of the head coach star dynamic, was it was just pretty incredible stuff.
You can't even recapture. It'll be hard to even embody how that felt that season. You know what I'm saying? Of course, it's time going by and nothing is like it was. When you think back on it, well, a few things I should say, but it's like, like Freddie Mercury at Live Aid, you know what I'm saying? It's like it for a Philadelphia Sixers fan, especially people like us who lived through it. So,
yeah, I mean, I think I'm sure there'll be some cool stories told regardless. Just remember talking to Eric Snow and George Lynch and being pretty blown away by the extent of the injuries they played through. And honestly, I don't think medical staffs could clear much of it today. George Lynch like trying to play on a broken foot, and Eric Snow, taking runners because it was painful to take, conventional 2-footed jumpers in huge games and knocking them down. And I think just the tenacity of that squad and how well they meshed with a star who was perfectly happy to put up a ton of shots is cool. And you don't see that type of thing very often where the supporting cast truly supports the best player so perfectly. So for me, I think it's hard to really say much negative about that run other than they didn't win the NBA title. But Shaquille O'Neal was very firmly in his prime and capable of, putting up 40 plus on the Defensive Player of the Year. And there's only so much you could do. I think no faulting that team's effort and the show they put on most nights. And even those 7-game series, I think the opposition was very, very strong. Sam Cassell, a member of that Milwaukee Bucks team, Glenn Big Dog Robinson, Ray Allen, and then
Vince Carter with the graduation,
yes,
and then coming to play the game.
The very memorable narrow miss in that Game 7, which rather ironically was in a second round series. So it shows you the margins are very small, and I think, yeah, if you live through that, you're probably quite grateful that the Sixers did get to play so many postseason games and have so many awesome moments on the national stage.
You can expect to hear feature interviews from Iverson, Larry Brown, Pat Croce, Billy King, Shaquille O'Neal, Stephen A. Smith, Theo Radcliffe, Aaron McKee, George Lynch, Philadelphia Freeway, and DJ Jazzy Jeff. Check it out, May 31st, 8 o'clock on NBA TV. I'm sure they'll replay it 1,000 times, so you can check it out. And yes, Iverson was a gun, but I came across a stat, which I'm sure in all of his ooziness with the basketball, he didn't quite reach this level, of Michael Porter Jr. Have you seen the stat?
No, I'm curious what it is.
He played 231 NBA games, including the regular season and playoffs. He's had 0 assists over 80 times.
Wow. Well, I mean, Allen Iverson had some huge assist game. I think
right
in the Game 7 against Toronto, he didn't shoot well, but it was in the teens, I know, for assists, and definitely was a shot first guy, but not a shot only guy.
Right.
And the reality was too, with the way that team was built, especially after they traded away Tony Kukoc that season, like they didn't really have shooters. It was Allen Iverson was the guy who needed to shoot, and he did that in some special ways. So yeah, no, definitely not a guy who was putting up 0 assists many nights, but capable of 48 points against the Lakers, and not many people could say that.
And a step over of Tyronn. How iconic. Hey, we love you all out there, and we appreciate you listening to the Sixers Talk podcast. Be sure to check out this man's work, Noah Levick, at NBCSportsPhiladelphia.com. For Ben Barry, I'm Danny Pommells. This has been the Sixers Talk podcast, brought to you by Wilmington University. WilMU Works. We'll see you next time.